Secret Cities. Carl Eiffler flew from Washington to London in early 1944. From there, he would make his way to Switzerland. Oppenheimer did what he could to assist helping the OSS find recent photographs of Heisenberg. Beyond that, the German bomb project was beyond his control. All Oppenheimer could do was build his own bomb as quickly as possible. By 1944, the stress of the race was taking a visible toll. He was smoking more than ever, as much as 4 or 5 packs a day. Violent, purple-faced coughing fits punctured his sentences. He shed more weight from his bony frame, dropping to an almost skeletal 115 pounds. And yet, somehow, the pressure was making him stronger. He spent long days pacing the tech area, popping his head into labs long enough to help solve problems, dropping into offices to join the ever-raging debates. It was clear to all of us, remembered Hans Bethe, that he knew everything that was important to know about the technical problems of the laboratory, and he somehow had it well organized in his head. When he asked scientists for updates, they'd hand him 15 or 20-page technical papers, dense with formulas and calculations. Well, he'd say, let's look this over and we'll talk about it. He'd flip through the pages for 5 minutes, then lead a discussion on the paper's key points. He had a remarkable ability to absorb things so rapidly, said the physicist Lee Dubridge. I don't think there was anything around the lab of any significance that Oppie wasn't fully familiar with. Each of us could walk in, sit on his desk, tell him how we thought something could be improved, remembered Joe Hirschfelder, a chemist. We all adored and worshipped him. Robert Wilson expressed a theme echoed by many at Los Alamos. Oppenheimer inspired them to do things they didn't think they could. In his presence, I became more intelligent, Wilson said, more vocal, more intense. He brought out the best in all of us, agreed Hans Bethe. Everyone worked day and night, Monday through Saturday. Oppenheimer insisted people take Sundays off to rest and recharge. Scientists fished for trout in nearby streams or climbed mountains and discussed physics while watching the sunrise. This is how many discoveries were made, one scientist said. Oppenheimer unwound by jumping on his horse, Chico, and taking long rides in the hills. Armed guards rode 2 steps behind him. When Oppenheimer called Richard Fenman into his office, the 26-year-old Fenman must have thought he was in trouble again. Several times already, he'd been ordered to the office of the Army censors. Censors read all incoming and outgoing mail to ensure that it contained no secret information. Fenman drove them crazy by having his family write to him in code. He enjoyed cracking the codes. Army censors did not. Then he found a new hobby, picking locks on filing cabinets around the tech area, and removing top-secret documents. Whenever I wanted somebody's report and they weren't around, confessed Fenman, I'd just go into their office, open the filing cabinet, and take it out. When he was done, he'd hand the papers back to the scientists and say, "Thanks for your report." "Where'd you get it?" they'd ask. "Out of your filing cabinet." "But I locked it." "I know you locked it. The locks are no good." This kind of stuff infuriated Leslie Groves. "Here, at great expense," he moaned to Oppenheimer, "the government has assembled the world's largest collection of crackpots." "He caused a lot of trouble," Oppenheimer's secretary said of Fenman. "But," she added, "Oppie made allowances." Even in a city of geniuses, Fenman's brain stood out, and now Oppenheimer needed him for an urgent job. By 1944, Los Alamos was just one small part of the Manhattan Project. The government was also building a massive factory at Oak Ridge, Tennessee, a secret city with 80,000 workers living in trailers around the plant. It was their job to prepare the uranium for the bomb being designed at Los Alamos. But there was a secret danger, Oppenheimer told Feynman. The Army liked to keep everything secret. So the Oak Ridge workers knew very little about uranium, and almost nothing about how to handle the stuff safely. Fenman would have to go there, inspect the factory, and help them prevent a catastrophic nuclear accident. Now, the following people are technically able down there at Oak Ridge, said Oppenheimer, naming scientists Feynman should talk to. I want you to make sure that these people are at the meeting, that you tell them how the thing can be made safe so that they really understand. What if they're not at the meeting? Asked Feynman, feeling suddenly overwhelmed. What am I supposed to do? Then you should say Los Alamos cannot accept the responsibility for the safety of the Oak Ridge plant. You mean me, little Richard, is going to go in there and say that? Yes. Little Richard, you go and do that. Fenman collected the top secret reports on uranium and strapped the papers to his back under his shirt. Then, for the first time in his life, he boarded an airplane. I really grew up fast, he said. Fenman inspected Oak Ridge. Conditions were worse than Oppenheimer had feared. Fenman wrote up a report about the safety problems and how to solve them. The next day, the Oak Ridge directors gathered to hear his findings, but right before the meeting, an Army colonel named Fenman warned Fenman not to discuss any secret information about how the atomic bomb might work. It's impossible for them to obey a bunch of rules unless they understand how it works, objected Fenman. The colonel repeated his order. Fenman's mind flashed back to his talk with Oppenheimer. He took a deep breath and shouted, Los Alamos cannot accept responsibility for the safety of the Oak Ridge plant. The colonel was silent for a while. All right, Mr. Fenman, he said finally. Go ahead. Fenman explained the basics. How uranium atoms split when hit with neutrons, how they give off energy, how a chain reaction could lead to an explosion. It wouldn't work just with any uranium, though. The nucleus of a uranium atom usually has a total of 238 protons and neutrons. It's called U-238. When hit with the speeding neutron, U-238 does not fission. It's useless to bomb makers. But a small percentage of uranium atoms, about 1 out of every 130, have a total of 235 protons and neutrons. This is U-235. When U-235 is hit by neutrons, it does split and release energy. The incredibly difficult job of the Oak Ridge plant was to separate U-235 atoms from U-238 atoms, sending just the U-235 to Los Alamos. Feynman explained how much uranium could be brought together before it became dangerous, and how to use cadmium to absorb neutrons and stop a chain reaction. All of this was elementary stuff at Los Alamos, he recalled, but they had never heard of any of it, so I appeared to be a tremendous genius to them. The Oak Ridge directors agreed to design the factory with this new information in mind. That was good, said Feynman. The plant would have blown up if nobody had paid attention. Oak Ridge continued producing the U-235, but very slowly. If everything went well, by the summer of 1945, they'd have enough fuel for just one atomic bomb. Determined to build a bigger arsenal, Leslie Groves ordered the construction of another secret city, this one in Hanford, Washington. The Hanford plant was based on something else scientists had learned about fission. When U-238 atoms are hit with flying neutrons, they absorb neutrons. That is, the neutrons stick in the nucleus of the uranium. This causes the uranium to change into an entirely new element, one that doesn't occur in nature. Scientists named it plutonium. Plutonium, they discovered, will fission even faster than U-235, so it could also be used for building atomic bombs. The Hanford plant was created to produce plutonium as quickly as possible. Between Los Alamos, Oak Ridge, Hanford, and other secret labs around the country, the Manhattan Project was employing more than 300,000 people. The government was spending hundreds of millions of dollars, yet the project was so secret, President Roosevelt chose not to tell Congress where all the money was going. A senator from Missouri named Harry Truman began to get curious. I had known, Truman later said, something that was unusually important was brewing in our war plants. But what? Worried that the government was wasting taxpayer money, Truman decided to send investigators to Oak Ridge and Hanford. Very soon after this, Truman's phone rang. It was Secretary of War Henry Stimson. I told him that I would come to his office at once, recalled Truman. He said he would rather come to see me. The 77-year-old Stimson walked into Truman's office. He lowered himself into a chair beside Truman's desk and got right to the point. Truman needed to stop asking questions about the secret war plants. Senator, said Stimson, I can't tell you what it is, but it is the greatest project in the history of the world. It is most top secret. Many of the people who are actually engaged in the work have no idea what it is, and we who do would appreciate your not going into those plants. All right, then, said Truman. All right, agreed Stimson. You assure me that this is for a specific purpose? Not only for a specific purpose, corrected Stimson, but a unique purpose. "I'll take you at your word," said Truman, disappointed. "I'll order the investigations into those plants called off." Truman couldn't help himself, though. He continued poking around for information about where all the money was going. "Truman is a nuisance," Stimson griped, but nothing the senator did changed Stimson's position. Knowledge of the atomic bomb was available on a strictly need-to-know basis. Harry Truman did not need to know.